All right, guys, welcome back to Be the Light Testimony Tuesday. Thanks for joining us again. Today I am joined by Kayla, and she's just going to be telling a little bit of her testimony tonight, and I just really think that you guys will get some really great insight out of her story. So, welcome, Kayla. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. So, if you want to go ahead and just introduce yourself a little bit and just share anything that you feel like you want to share about just who you are as a person first.
My name's Kayla. I am married. I've been married going on 8 years this year. No children, no human children as of yet. We have two dogs, two pit mixes, Charlene and Benny. Just a little bit about me. I work as a project manager, and I love music. I love to sing worship music. I'm actually in the worship. We're on the worship team at LCBC West York, and I also love baseball. I love the Phillies. My husband and I do, and just hanging with my family. That's what I like to do. So.
That's awesome. I love that. Um, I love that you do worship too, because I cannot sing. So anyone who
Thank
can,
you.
I'm like, you guys are awesome. But
Thank you. I appreciate it.
you're welcome. But anyway, so going in, what I'm just gonna go into kind of back to the basics for a quick minute. So what was your first
Sure.
like experience or exposure to the church in general that you can remember?
I can't remember because I was a baby.
Okay.
I actually grew up. I grew up Catholic. I was baptized in the Catholic Church, um, and my family went to church most Sundays. And I actually went to Catholic elementary school for up till fifth grade. And then in fifth grade, I transferred over to public school, but I still was doing Sunday school at the Catholic Church.
Mm.
I ultimately got confirmed in the Catholic Church. So that really was my first exposure to church. However, I don't like to say it was my first exposure to God because I feel like I didn't really honestly develop my relationship with God until much later in life. In fact, like I would say 2023 is probably when I first found my relationship with God. So,
Okay, that makes sense. So growing up
yeah.
Catholic, what brought you kind of out of the Catholic Church and into kind of where you are now, and like developing that relationship with God and being in a more like Christian-based church?
This is going to be a long story. So
Okay,
I hope we're ready because,
that's okay.
um, yeah, a lot of life happened in between there.
Mm,
Like I said, went to public school. I ultimately, went to college. My first year of college was about 3 hours away
mm,
from here. I was your typical high schooler. I wanted to get away as quickly as
mm,
possible. I was like, I want to go far away. Landed at the University of Pittsburgh, the Johnstown campus, and honestly, because of like feeling like I was forced into or I shouldn't say relationship, but being forced into church,
mm,
I wanted nothing to do with it. When I went to college, I was like, I will not be going to church. I have no intention of having a relationship with God.
mm,
I couldn't wait to not ever have to do that again. And, I definitely, my first year of college, I did some things I shouldn't have done. I was not academic focused at all. I was partying. I was, doing things that, typical college kids do, but things that don't really lead you down the right path. And so ultimately, I ended up back home. I started going to York College, and that's ultimately where I got my degree from. It's funny because I look back on that now and I know now it was God. Like God put me in really bad situations at that school, in order to like push me to come home because that's like really what I needed to do. Up at that school, I isolated. I had no friends. It was just really bad. When I came home, I lived with my parents for a period of time. But then ultimately I did move out. I moved on to campus, and then ultimately the next year into my own apartment. And I had a really amazing experience there. It was so much better. And, I wasn't like partying. I think at first I went to like one or two parties, and then, I just had this moment where I was like, what am I doing? Like, this is not why I'm here. I'm here to better my life. And, so I turned away from that. I started getting more involved with like, good things on campus, like Student Senate and working for the biology department. My degree was biology. But still, like, I still wasn't there yet in wanting to turn to any sort of religion or a relationship with God. Like, that just wasn't on my radar. And my senior year of college, I actually met my now husband. I met him online. So he was 4 years older than me. So at the time I was 20. He was 24.
Okay.
And, he ultimately, after a couple of months of dating, he ultimately actually moved into my apartment because he was actually from Lancaster, but working down in the York area. So it just kind of made sense. We were with each other all the time. It was just like, seemed practical. And I think like when everyone starts, your relationship, right? Like you expect the fairy tale, right? Especially when you're 20, like you think that it's going to be what you see on TV. It's going to be what you see on social media. And I had relationships before him, but I don't know. With him, it felt different. It felt really good. Like it felt really natural. Like I just was like, okay, I think this is going to be something. I kind of knew really early on that I wanted to like probably marry him. But again, like at that age, you don't understand what marriage is. You just don't. You can pretend you do, but you don't. But anyway, so, early on in our relationship of dating, like it was really good. Like there was nothing bad. There were no like red flags, anything. But that did not last forever. So, without telling too much of my husband's story, because I think that's his story to tell, he definitely had a very chaotic upbringing. And I don't think that he had the best representation of what a husband was supposed to be. And also like how in general, just to be like a good man, and so we struggled a little bit, with like aggression and fighting and, never physical abuse towards me, but like, punching a wall or like throwing stuff, like things that could potentially lead to that place. And it was the first time I was ever confronted with something like that, because I grew up in a really stable home. My parents are still together to this day. Like we didn't have chaos. So to be faced with that with someone that like now I'm in love with, right? Like, and now you're invested and you're living together. Like I didn't know what to do with that. But something was telling me to stay. Like and I feel like it's so cliche, right? Like we always look at people in relationships that experience some kind of abuse and you think like, why did they stay? Yeah. But it's like, until you're in those person's shoes, like you don't really understand what that's like. To me, like my line that needed to be crossed was if he hit me, then that'd be different, but he never did that. Yeah. So I was like, as long as he's not taking it out on me in that way, I can manage. And something that like I've learned later in life, and I'll kind of get to this as we kind of come full circle with my story, like, what the world says we should do is very different than what God says we should do. Yeah. Especially in relationships. We see on social media, we glorify leaving, we glorify going on to the next better thing, right? But that's not how good marriages are done, right? Like it requires work and it requires staying, and it requires bettering the other person and helping lead them ultimately in their faith, but just in general to being a better person. So, right, wrong, or indifferent, I stayed. And we did end up getting married. I think I was 24.
Okay.
I think I'm blanking, but not too long
Yeah.
after. We got engaged a year into dating, and then 2 years later we got married. So yeah, I probably would have been around 24. And again, like our marriage, it wasn't perfect. Our engagement wasn't perfect. We've had a lot of turmoil with family. So sorry, you're gonna hear my dogs bark.
That's okay.
But yeah, uh, yeah, we had a lot of issues, a lot of pushback from family, and you know, at the end of the day, like 24 is still young, and there was still a lot that I didn't know or know how to deal with, and so ultimately, like we struggled a lot, and we struggled financially, we struggled with each other, and we kind of put off the idea, right? I think the natural progression is you get married, you have kids. We put off the idea of having kids for a while. It wasn't until I was 28 that I thought, okay, maybe now's the time we can consider having children. And even at that time, things were still not perfect. We were still, we still had really bad fights, like screaming at each other kind of fights. We still weren't in a good place financially. But I was like, you know what, like I'm getting older, I'm getting closer to 30. Like I can't wait forever to have children, So we started trying for children, and ultimately, it took us about 9 months to get pregnant. So it was a really long time. And ultimately that pregnancy ended up being an ectopic pregnancy. So yeah. And I feel like I'm good now, but there was a time that I would not have been able to talk about this. So that was back in 2022. On March 1st of 2022, I had my pregnancy removal surgery. So they literally go in and they take out, in that case, they only took out a portion of my tube where the pregnancy would have been. So because of that, they left a portion of my tube on that side, in my body. So, we continued to try. We actually were about to start our first fertility treatment, which was time cycling. And I actually ended up getting pregnant naturally again. But again, it was another ectopic pregnancy.
Oh, God.
So, and it was again on my same side, right? Because again, they left a little part of that there. So the part that was left is where that second pregnancy developed. So, the first time it happened, like you just don't think, like when you get pregnant, you don't think anything bad's going to happen unless something bad happens, right? Like all you can think is excitement. I remember giving him the pregnancy test around Valentine's Day and being so excited, and just like, I was like, this is exactly what we needed. Like we've been struggling, like this is going to be everything that's going to fix, right? That's what I felt like. And I remember, like, I still have in this room in the closet, I got all the announcement stuff. I have like onesies and t-shirts and all these like cute things to give family members and friends to announce. I was just so beyond like ready. And when you get pregnant, you envision that baby's life like all the way through. Like, even like I was even thinking to like them going to school and them playing sports, and like what would they do, and like what kind of sport mom would I be? Would I be like, would I have to be a soccer mom even though I hate soccer? Or like would I be at baseball games like I really want to be, like or whatever. And of course we were thinking of names, right? And that's another thing that I kind of regret, is we never actually got to like name our babies, either one of them, because we never got to the point where we knew a gender. So, but it's like, once that happens, it takes away any joy that comes with pregnancy. Like you will never feel what other people get to feel ever again. So when it came time for the second one, there was no joy. Like it instantly like, what's going to go wrong this time? And I was right. It ended up being ectopic, and I kind of knew I was having the same kind of pain, and I just felt, I was like, something's off, like something's not right. My levels weren't right for my hormones and such. And so I was just kind of waiting at that point for it to be grown enough that they could see it on an ultrasound to say, yeah, like it's ectopic.
Okay.
So again, that day was hard the second time because my husband was out of town. So I was rushed into emergency surgery without him there. And I did wake up, and thank God he rushed home and he was there when I woke up. And I just was like, I just remember like breaking down. I was like, I just like needed him there. But that time, like after the second one, like that was probably like the darkest time in my life. Like, and again, like you have to remember, I haven't made my way back to God at this point.
Yeah.
So I didn't have a relationship with God to rely on. Like I didn't have that faith, and neither did my husband. And like, I just felt like so alone. I felt so isolated. I felt like nobody understood. Like I didn't even feel like my husband understood like what I was going through.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't the one that had to be rushed into surgery. He wasn't the one that had to like, you know, have a baby in their body and then be lost, you know?
Yeah.
So, and honestly, I had anger towards him because like, I felt like he didn't care as much. Now I know that's not true, but like in the moment, like that's what it felt like. It felt like he was just getting over it and I was not over it, you know? We had some, what'd you say?
I said, everyone just grieves so differently. It's so hard.
Right. And that's the thing, like, and now I know that, and like now, like we've had very frank conversations in which like, no, it did like bother him, but he felt like he had to keep everything together. So like, that's why. But from my perspective, I'm like, why aren't you crying about this? Like, why aren't you emotional about this? You know?
Yeah.
So, you know, after that, we did end up eventually, not right away, doing, fertility treatment. We did time cycling. So we were allowed to do 3 rounds of that. So we did. The first round failed. Second round, they actually stopped pretty early on because it wasn't even working. And then the third round ultimately was our best round, but ultimately I didn't get a pregnancy from it.
Okay.
And from all of the hormone treatments and everything, I actually like developed like really severe anxiety. And like, it was so bad. Like I had never had a panic attack until then. It was just awful. And so kind of from that moment on, we've made the decision to not pursue additional fertility treatments. Obviously, you know, IVF is an option, IUI, they have so many different treatments now, but it's just for me, like the hormone piece, like I don't know if I'd be able to handle that. So, so here we are, right? Our marriage isn't great. We're financially not in a good place. You know, we're struggling, we're behind on bills, things like that. We've just lost 2 pregnancies. And now we just went through 3 rounds of treatment that didn't work. And now I have anxiety that I didn't have before. So, I mean, everything that could happen to us in that moment felt like it was happening. And that's where I've realized that was God also, because that is the only point in which we find God. When you're not in an active relationship with God, it takes rock bottom, you know, for you to say, okay, I've done everything I can do. Everything is going wrong. I've tried to handle everything on my own. I obviously can't do this.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately what led us back to church. So in December of 2023, so my second ectopic was May of 2023. So in December of 2023, you know, we actually just went for Christmas to LCBC East York. My husband had gone to LCBC previously when he was living in Lancaster, but it wasn't really like a regular thing. So we were like, let's try it out. We went at Christmas, and they were advertising a new series called When It Hits the Fan. And I can tell you, I felt like everything in my life had hit the fan at that moment.
Yeah, I bet.
And I was like, yeah, I was like, this is perfect. I was like, Derek, I want to come back for this. Like, I just want to see, like, what do they have to say? And if we hate it, we never have to come back. And he did. He was like, yeah, let's do it. And I'm telling you, like, that series, it changed our lives. Like, it changed our lives for the better. I got baptized in March of 2024, and part of my baptism story, I speak about worship music, because during that series, there was a song called Runaway by Jess Ray, but it was sung by Ebony at the East Shore campus. And it was during that song, like, I can't explain what happened, but I literally, like, looked up at the sky, tears streaming. I was bawling in that service. And I just said, God, I lift it all to you. I'm going to cry, because, like, I can't even explain, like, that moment. I was like, I give you everything. I give you every, like, bit of anger. I give you every bit of, like, pain and hurt, like, and I'm going to trust you with all of it. Yeah. Because there was nothing left for me. We weren't successful in pregnancy. I was planning on, honestly, divorcing my husband. Like, we were in such a bad place. We had tried marriage counseling. That didn't work. Financially, like, I was basically prepared to lose our house at any moment. It was bad. It was just so bad. So it's like, what else can you do but, like, look up at God and say, like, please, like, I'm begging you, like, help me. And that was the first time I felt God, like, genuinely. That was the first time I had talked to God. Like, so this is all very new for me. And, but I was, like, all in. From that moment on, like, I can't explain the feeling. I was, like, hooked. I was like, okay, I want to keep coming to church. I want to get involved. I want to do everything I can in this community. And so I ultimately signed us up for Financial Peace University through the church. Like I said, in March of 2024, I got baptized. And my husband, while he was, like, a little slower to follow along, he came with, right? Like, he was supportive. But eventually he caught up. So he started going to, it's called Men's Alliance, Men's Alliance through LCBC. And I noticed such a change from him in that, like, having these godly men, like, around him to, like, show him what it means to be a husband, to be, like, a good friend, a good person, and also to have all of those things happen rooted in God first. Like, I just can't even explain. He turned into this person that, like, only God could turn him into. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, him going to Men's Alliance ultimately encouraged me to go to Women's Alliance. So he definitely led the charge on that. Okay. And I started going to Women's Alliance in August of 2024, and I've been going ever since. And I absolutely love it. It's not just showing him how to be better, it's showing me how to be better. And that's, like, what I talked about before is, like, even though, like, yes, like, maybe he didn't do A, B, and C, like, how I wanted him to or needed him to, it's kind of irrelevant. Like, it's you both against a problem. Like, we hear that a lot, but it's so true. And if nobody ever gives, you're never going to get anywhere. I remember our pastor, we actually had, like, a counseling session with him one time, and he drew a stick figure picture up on the whiteboard, and it was a man and a woman, and each person had a bucket of water, or was supposed to be filled with water. Sorry, dogs again. And he was like, you're both holding your bucket right now, but nobody wants to pour any water into each other's bucket. Yeah. And if nobody ever does that, nothing ever changes, right? Like, you're not going to pour into him. He's not going to pour into you. And you're just going to go in this vicious circle where you're both just hoarding whatever water you have left. So don't you want to fill each other's buckets? Isn't that the goal, right? And so it was just, this analogy, like, lives in my head every day. And sometimes that requires a whole lot of humility and a whole lot of just swallowing your pride and being the first one to give, even when you feel like you're not in the wrong. And that took me a long time to learn. Like, I honestly had my expectations were through the roof. Like, I never thought I was wrong. I had to learn how to be able to forgive and also just not put such a high expectation when everybody's different and everybody functions differently. And I can't expect him or anyone to think or function how I do. Like, that's not right. God made us all unique and different, and that's for a reason. And so ultimately, going to Alliance, going to LCBC, now we go to LCBC West, getting more involved there. Like I said, I sing in the worship band there and absolutely love it. Like, that's like honestly one of my favorite things that I do. And that just has, like, I can't even explain how much it has changed our life. We have a peace that's like, you can't explain it. There's no words, like, and it's a peace that only comes from God. People that go through pregnancy loss, like, right? Like, we shouldn't be happy. Like, we should be miserable. Like, we still don't have a baby. Like, we still struggle with infertility. But we're not, because you know what? Like, I know, like, God has us and God provides, and he provides in a way that is so much better than anything we could ever think up or imagine. Another thing for me is like purpose in the pain. Like, there's so much purpose in going through something because, testimony, right? Like, being able to, like, show people, number one, like, you're not alone. Like, other people are absolutely going through what you have gone through. But number two, like, being able to show people that, yeah, like, I went through these things, but I still love God and I trust God and I have all the faith in God. Like, that to me is like, that's how you show strength. And that's what God puts us on this earth to do, is to have purpose. So, one thing that, I did do is we have an infertility and pregnancy loss group through LCBC West York. It's a virtual group. And we meet once a month, every first Monday of the month. And for me, like, that is my purpose. Like, my purpose is to help other people going through the things I went through and make sure that they stay strong in their faith, and that I can help them to, guide them in the godly way and not what the world says that we should do. So,
yeah, I love that.
So, yeah, that was a very long story, but
that's okay.
That's how we ended up back with God, back in church.
Hey, that's okay. That's like your whole testimony wrapped up in one question, so I love it. I love that you.
Yeah.
I love that you are using what you've went through, using your hardships to encourage others with your group. I mean, that's just so powerful. What is the name of your group?
It's called Conquering Infertility Together. We nickname it CIT because that's the abbreviation. So.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, I love that you're encouraging other. Is that just for women, or is it like a couples thing?
It is a co-ed group, so it's couples. Yeah.
Okay, that's so powerful. I love that. I love that you guys can do that together. I just love your story. I love the story of, like, growing up Catholic and just kind of stepping away. And then I love that moment that you talked about in church where God just wrecked you, because, let's be real, sometimes that's what he needs to do to get our attention. But that's just so powerful. And I do feel like your whole theme has just been, like you said, the purpose in the pain was awesome. I love that.
Yeah, I think, it's funny, like, you look back on your life and, like, maybe before you had a relationship with God, and you see how he was trying to bring you back, but you weren't listening, and, like, sometimes, like you said, like, it takes him hitting you over the head really hard to be like, okay, you need me, like, you need to wake up and realize that. So.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thank you so much for being brave enough to come on and share, because I know that's so hard to do, especially with something so sensitive like an infertility or loss or anything along those lines. That's just such a sensitive topic for people. So I really appreciate you being brave enough and open enough to come and share. Is there anything else you wanted to share kind of before we wrap up?
No, I really appreciate the opportunity, and I think it's kind of fitting, right? We just had Mother's Day not that long ago, and it's a really hard time for anyone going through this. So I guess I just want to say that if you are going through infertility, pregnancy loss, child loss, whatever it is, just know that like you're not alone, and I'd be happy to talk more with you about that. So feel free to check out our group.
Awesome. Yeah, and for anyone watching, I will post some information in the little description box below about Kayla's group and where you can kind of find all that information if you're looking for something. I'll post that below. But I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. So I just want to thank you again, Kayla, for coming on. And for anyone watching, just remember that you are never alone and everyone has a story. So please make sure you're sharing your story with anyone in your circle that needs to hear it. You never know who needs to hear it, is kind of the point. But thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it.